Good evening, everyone. My name is Carol Allman Morton. I'm the Executive Director of OLLI at Berkshire Community College, and I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight. You can give yourselves a round of applause if you want. This lecture is a wonderful example of the importance of philanthropy to allow OLLI to expand our programming and make it available to the wider community, which is a big part of our mission. And I want to thank the Sherman family, Mona's family, writ large, and all of her friends who continue to give to the fund that makes tonight possible. So thank you to all of those donors, and let's give them a round of applause as well. I want to thank Berkshire Gas for their ongoing support of this event and Berkshire Health Systems for their ongoing sponsorship of OLLI at Berkshire Community College. And that's my whole spiel, other than you should come to some more OLLI stuff. And our next speaker is going to tell you about some of the things that are coming up soon. I would like to welcome the president of Berkshire Community College and OLLI's biggest supporter, Ellen Kennedy.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the 18th annual Mona Sherman Memorial Lecture. Mona Sherman played a transformative role in the growth and expansion of OLLI at Berkshire Community College. This lecture series, established through the generosity of her family and friends, honors both her love of the Berkshire's community and also of lifelong learning. OLLI at Berkshire Community College continues to grow its programming, offering courses, workshops, lectures, social activities, community special interest groups, and more to its members, and vitally to the community at large, as in tonight. I want to thank OLLI members and volunteers for growing such a vibrant learning community. It has been a joy to support OLLI in my role as president of Berkshire Community College. As you may be able to relate better than most, as I prepare to leave Berkshire Community College and I come to many milestones, this one is a little sweeter as I transition into the opportunity to join so many of you in the classroom via Zoom in my retirement, but it's going to be delayed 1 year. I'll see you in a year. OLLI is excited for our upcoming summer sessions, and there's still time, in person or online. If you haven't signed up yet, there's more information online, or you can pick up some information in the lobby. There was a lot of it when I walked through. OLLI is excited for all of the programming coming up. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to Lisa Sharkey, Art Sherman, and all of Mona's family for your ongoing support and partnership for this program. We are also fortunate to have two of Lisa's children and Mona's grandchildren with us tonight, Gregory accompanied by Irina and Casey accompanied by Jacob. Thank you to the amazing Mehawi staff and volunteers for your hospitality and support in everything from lighting and tech to ticketing and seating. I would now like to welcome our speakers tonight, Dana Bash and Lisa Sharkey, to the stage. Yeah. A creative pioneer across multiple media platforms, Lisa Sharkey has overseen the acquisition and publication of more than 100 New York Times bestsellers, many of them at #1. She is a senior vice president and publisher of Harper Influence, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. Lisa is a veteran interviewer, moderator, and speaker on various topics, from book publishing to transferable skills in the media landscape, and has written for top magazines such as Redbook and Parents. Prior to her publishing career, Sharkey was the president of Al Roker Entertainment, a senior producer of Good Morning America, and worked at various network news organizations from CBS to PBS and also King World. A two-time Emmy Award winner, Sharkey is also the recipient of Peabody and DuPont Awards for her work as part of ABC News team during 9/11. Sharkey co-authored with her late husband, architect Paul Gleicher, the book Dreaming Green, Echo Fabulous Homes Designed to Inspire, published in 2008 by Clarkson Potter. In 2024, Sharkey received the Distinguished Alumni Award from the School of Arts and Sciences at her alma mater, Washington University in St. Louis. Also, importantly, Lisa Sharkey is responsible for selecting the extraordinary Mona Sherman Memorial Lecture guest each year. And this year, that guest is Dana Bash. Dana is CNN's chief political correspondent, anchor of Inside Politics with Dana Bash, and co-anchor of State of the Union with Jake Tappa and Dana Bash, the network's Sunday morning newsmaker show. Bash is an award-winning journalist who plays a key role in the network's political coverage, conducting high-profile interviews with candidates, serving as an anchor for CNN's Election Night in America special coverage, and frequently moderating presidential debates and town hall specials. Bash's first book, America's Deadliest Election, which she co-authored with David Fisher, details the 1872 Louisiana gubernatorial election. It debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. In 2021, Bash launched her CNN series, Being, which features in-depth conversations with individuals affecting American policy, politics, and culture, giving viewers an understanding of the human being behind the public face. Her digital CNN series, Badass Women of Washington, profiles women from various backgrounds and generations to show how they have shattered glass ceilings on their way up the ranks. Her CNN special report, Rising Hate, Antisemitism in America, is an in-depth look at how antisemitism, once the hate of extremists, became mainstream and explores ways to curb it. Bash won the Radio and Television Correspondents Association's Joan S. Barone Award for her original reporting on a Stock Act loophole that led Congress to pass legislation to close it. She is also the winner of the National Press Foundation's Saul Teisoff Award for Excellence in Broadcast Journalism, and a 3-time recipient of the Foundation's Everett McKinley Dirksen Award for Distinguished Reporting of Congress. Bash graduated cum laude with her bachelor's degree in political communications from the George Washington University. Thank you, Dana and Lisa, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you both so much.
And thank you, Ellen and Carol and Dana, for being here. And thank all of you. Filled to the rafters, nearly 700 people here tonight. Thanks for coming out in the rain. So Dana and I are connected through Dana's dad, Stu Schwartz, who was my boss when I worked at Good Morning America. And Dana was a very young person then. And she's still pretty young. Still pretty young. So Stu, who we just FaceTimed with a little bit ago, was really an iconic and legendary television news producer at the beginning of Nightline and many other programs. So I just want to start out with asking you a little bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up, as my children did, around the news business, which mine didn't go into, but you did.
Kicking and screaming. First of all, hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. It's really remarkable. Thank you for inviting me to be here. It really is an honor. The answer to your question is it was just sort of through osmosis, I guess, and my DNA, that I stopped fighting. But growing up, I said very vocally to my parents, especially my dad, your job stinks because your hours are crazy, and we go on vacation, a pope dies, we got to go home, or something else happens, and you're gone. And he was, I called him an indoor cat. I mean, he was a show producer. He wasn't a correspondent or a field producer, so he wasn't sent to far-flung places around the world, but still he had to be involved. And I certainly got it, and I understood it, but my entire childhood I said, I'm going to have something that's more stable. So I went to college at the George Washington University, and I started taking, my just regular general liberal arts classes, and I just kind of felt the suction of politics and communications, and I just kind of went with it. And I decided to apply to the political communication program at GW, which at the time you couldn't apply to until you were a sophomore. And then I started doing internships, and I tried, Lisa. Like first I said, maybe I'll work in politics. So I did internships and volunteered in various political offices. And I was like, this is really interesting to me, but I don't have a passion for the Democrats. I don't have a passion for the Republicans, but I really find it interesting. Then I tried to maybe do a different form of communication, like PR. I actually interned for the communications department of what was Cap Cities ABC back then. I hated it because it was very corporate, and it was like an office, and you had to sit at a desk, and I was like, this is not for me. And then I finally did my first internship in TV news. It was at CBS in Washington, 2020 M Street, and I was hooked. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to stop fighting my DNA. Because my father ended up working his whole career in TV news. As you mentioned, my mom started out that way. They actually met at Northwestern at the Medill School of Journalism, and then really got to know each other, both working for the local ABC station in Chicago. And then she ended up leaving the business
WLS.
pretty early. Yes, exactly, pretty early. So it's really in my DNA, and so here I am.
So in the beginning, you were behind the scenes.
Yes.
And then I have this memory of Stu telling me that something happened one day where you were reporting off air, and then somehow maybe someone wasn't there one day and you ended up on air. There may be a different story, but what is
like
the
a version
story?
of that? Yeah. So I started out in the tape library, which doesn't exist anymore because there's no
more tape.
So there's no library necessary for the tape. Now it's off in a warehouse somewhere, which takes like 10 years to get. I don't know why it's not digitized. That's a whole nother conversation. But and then I started worked my way out of there in about a year, and I was an associate producer, then producer on the weekend public affairs shows, which is kind of odd because State of the Union, which I'm a co-anchor of, is kind of the latest incarnation of those shows, which is really where I started in the business. And I really liked it. I liked being in the control room. I liked shaping the shows. I liked working with the hosts and coming up with questions and figuring out who the guest was and doing all the things that you had to do. But something in me said, you know what? I think it would be fun to try news gathering, to try reporting. And so I made a lateral move. I went to the assignment desk, which is the place in the newsroom where, I mean, the name kind of makes it pretty clear, where you give out assignments to reporters and producers, but also being there, you're really in the newsroom and you're really in the thick of it. And so I got to be part of lots of stories, political and non-political, whether either helping the reporters come up with it or actually going out in the field with them. And I was like, okay, this is so cool. I love this so much. And then getting the news, getting the information, and then putting it together in the piece that would air that day. And then it was during Bill Clinton's presidency, and then impeachment happened. And it was all hands on deck to go to the Capitol for the impeachment trial. And so I went. And this was like heaven. It was like I couldn't believe that you could walk around the halls of Congress and talk to senators and get information, and they talk back to you, like they answered questions. It's like, this is amazing. Why doesn't everybody do this? And so after the impeachment trial was over, the reporter producer team who were there full time, they went to go on the campaign trail for the 2000 presidential election, and I got the job to be the Senate producer. So it was during that sort of gig that I really honed my reporting skills, and I did break several stories, some on my own, some with my colleagues, and there was one big one after 9/11, did you work with David Ensor at ABC? He's probably before your
No, I worked
Your
at Good
time.
Morning America during 9/11
Yeah.
for your father.
Do you remember what happened that day? Did you hear? I don't know if you were you in the control room with him?
I was not in the control
Okay.
room.
Well,
I was sending people downtown and
yeah.
pulling together sort of second hour coverage.
Yeah.
We
So
were, I didn't come home for maybe 4 days
I
after
bet.
9/11.
Oh, I bet. I was I was a producer, and I was trying to get into the Capitol because I knew it was going to be a big story. And I put my finger on the button for the elevator to go up to where the TV radio booth is. And they started screaming, everybody evacuate, because on the other side of the Capitol, they could see the smoke rising from the Pentagon. And so I ran out, everybody ran out, and we started to, report and so forth. This is a little bit of a tangent, sorry, but this is sort of an interesting connection here. And, there was a lot of it wasn't misinformation. There was just a lot of things that people were hearing that turned out not to be true, mostly because cell phones really weren't working.
Yeah, all the cell phones were down.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to get news out.
Very
and people
hard.
were frantic. And also, a lot of people were also very worried about close friends and
Exactly.
relatives while simultaneously reporting on this, the biggest story of our lives.
So that's what happened in that moment with my dad, and he was told about this because he said he kind of like blacked out about it. Afterwards, he was told that, so Peter Jennings was in the anchor chair, and he reported that a bomb went off in the Capitol. And my dad knew that I was there because I covered Congress. And he slammed his hand on the desk in the control room, and he said, God damn it. And then soon thereafter, they found out that that wasn't true. But yeah, it's one of those moments where we all have those moments as humans, as Americans, and then the sort of weird instinct that we were talking about actually beforehand of having to sort of divorce yourself from that and just do your job. In any event,
So that was an example of why you would rather be right than first.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which is, things have changed a lot since then, and we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, and
how is that possible? But so there was a story that I got that it was in the months after 9/11 that the Intelligence Committee in the Senate was told that the NSA actually had intercepts saying tomorrow is Judgment Day or tomorrow is 0 hour, or something like that. And they took them down on September 10th, and they didn't translate it till September 12th. Now, it wasn't actionable, as they say, but it was a big hint. And so I got that story, we reported it, and a couple of others. And then they said, do you want to try being on air? And I was like, and I knew enough to know that that was not like piece of cake, at least certainly wasn't for me. So I tried it, and they put me at the White House. I was the lowest on the totem pole, and my first live shot was from the north lawn of the White House, which I do not recommend. Anybody here thinking about going into television news, do it somewhere else besides the White House before you start. Not a great idea.
Wow. So let's fast forward 25 years to today,
Yeah.
and the news has changed a lot. And we are now in a 24/7 cycle. There used to be a time, which I'm sure many of you remember, where you would wait until the end of the day to get your news, and you would get it at 6:30, or you would then maybe get it at Nightline. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the news media today, and you're a part of that, is doing the best service for America that they could be doing?
I mean, I think the short answer to that is sometimes, honestly. I think that we're human, and I do genuinely, I'll just speak for myself, we do our best. And as humans, sometimes your best isn't good enough, and sometimes your best is. And there are so many downsides to the way that our media landscape is right now, because it's so fractured, and there's so many different voices, and it's hard to keep track of what's real and what's not. But there are also a lot of upsides. We were talking about Jim Acosta, who used to work with me at CNN, and now he has a Substack and Don Lemon has a Substack, and so many people have this access to this to independent media and journalism separate from big companies like where I work, and there's an audience for that, and that's great. And so it's so different, and frankly, it's more and more different every day. And the way I look at it, Lisa, is I can only control what I can control, and I just try to do my best every day and try to ask the best questions, try to cover the right stories. And sometimes we hit it out of the park, and sometimes we don't.
So let's talk about some of the pivotal moments in your career. And I'm particularly fascinated by what it must have been like to moderate presidential debates in our current time as this.
Well, there's the debates, and then there's the debate.
Well, let's talk about the debate.
Yeah. I mean, what an experience. Okay, so for people who don't know, there was a man named Donald Trump, and he was president, and he wanted to be president again, and he debated the guy in the White House named Joe Biden. But seriously, it was absolutely surreal. First, it was right about this time 2 years ago. 2 years ago, wow. That then President Biden and his team made a decision that they were going to break sort of all norms, and that they were going to challenge Donald Trump to a debate way early in the cycle. And they were going to do it outside of the Presidential Debate Commission, which has been sort of the central place and the decider on how general election debates get done for decades, really. And so that was the death knell for that, which RIP, fine. And so there were lots of negotiations going on, as you can imagine, and CNN got the debate. And it was in Atlanta. There was no audience, which was part of their negotiations. And it was in a studio, well, not exactly like this because there was no audio, but it was in audience, but it was one of CNN studios. And the big challenge for us as moderators and the whole production team and editorial team was that one of the criteria for Biden, the demands that Biden had, it really was a big one, was that when the person is not talking, the microphone is turned off. And the reason is because, if you remember the 2020 debate that Chris Wallace moderated, that I might have called a shit show on television, it was a shit show because they were talking over each other. It was mostly Trump talking over him, and we found out later probably it's because he had COVID at the time. Well, he had COVID at the time, but maybe that's why he just, well, anyway, for lots of reasons. And so that was a big issue for Biden. And so part of our prep, a big part of our prep, which normally is the way you do it, is you kind of start as early as you can, weeks early, and we didn't have that many weeks in this case, and you just come up with buckets and buckets and buckets of questions, and you do it by theme and by category, and we sort of narrow down and try to make the questions as sort of pointed and relevant as you possibly can. And then you get into a room, which we call the cone, and you mock debate it. And it's beyond helpful to everybody because you have somebody who plays the candidate. We had somebody who played Trump. We had somebody who played Biden. And again, separate from the microphone situation, you always want to have this because when you're doing those mock debates, you realize, well, this isn't going to work because it kind of falls flat, or if we do this question, you better be ready for a follow-up. And I even for my Sunday show, I've started doing it sometimes like in my own head, or sometimes I'll say it out loud and like a kind of like a crazy person in our meeting, and I'll ask the question, and then I'll answer my own question, and then I'll ask the question again. But it helps because politicians tend to be repetitive and a bit predictable in what they say. The challenge of the microphones was like next level because we knew that we would be able to hear what the interrupter was saying, and we weren't sure, despite lots and lots of testing and audio prep and everything else, how much the audience was going to be able to hear. So that was a big, big part of the process. I mean, we spent tens, we probably spent a total of like 2 or 3 days total doing the audio thing. And then it didn't even matter because nobody interrupted anybody because President Biden didn't even really finish a lot of his answers. One little bit of behind the scenes that I can give you is that I think the debate started at 8 p.m. Donald Trump was there at 6 p.m., which was smart. I mean, they were both invited to come early, and he did what every candidate in every debate that I have been a part of does. You go with the people who are producing it, and you check out the studio, and you say, okay, this is where I'm standing. What are the time cues? Where are the cameras? Where are the moderators going to be sitting? Just like basic stuff. And it was especially important to Trump because he does think like a reality show producer and star. I mean, he has done this a lot. And so Jake Tapper and I, were supposed to be in our chairs at 7:30 ready to go to get comfortable and have like 30 minutes. It's 7:30, we're not allowed into the studio. It's 7:35, we're not allowed into the studio. 7:40, we're like, what is going on? This is high stakes, high pressure, like I wanted to throw up kind of nerves, okay? And President Biden wasn't there.
He showed up at 10 till?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, you can see it on if you kind of watch the coverage, because you can see when the motorcade comes in. And so he didn't have any of the prep and then the sort of decompression time that Trump had. And we were begging him to come. I mean, not me, but our bosses, my bosses. What's going on? Calling the White House people. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And I still don't know the answer to why he got there late. I mean, I have some suspicions, but he finally got there and he had like no time to digest what was going on. So like when they came in, and I don't know if you can go back now on YouTube and see it, there were times when President Biden was kind of looking over here, and it's kind of probably like this, because you all are very dark to us right now. There was nothing over there. There were no cameras. We weren't there. There was nothing. And it's maybe because he didn't have any time to really contemplate the stagecraft of it, which was so important. And then he was tired and he said he was sick and all the things that happened. But that, I think, that sort of
changed the course of history that night.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the changing course of history and the changing landscape in Washington, D.C. You've covered Congress. You've covered the White House. How have things changed as a journalist? Because we all know how things have changed as the general public. But for you, the day-to-day of your job, the tick-tock of what you do every day, is that basically the same, or is the landscape so different that you have to approach everything with a different view of it?
It's so different that you have to approach everything. I mean, the basics of reporting and making sure, like you said, you have your sources solid. You said better to be last or second than
right than first.
Right than first is still paramount as far as I'm concerned, and certainly as far as everybody who I work with is concerned. But it's nonstop. I mean, in some ways, the technology has made things easier. I mean, I can sit on a set, or I can sit at my son's baseball game and I can report because I have a phone and I can text, or I can signal, or I can email, or I can see on Twitter something happening. I mean, there are so many more ways to get information as a reporter and get it out there, and also sort of try to piece things together as a journalist. But because of that, it is so instantaneous. You have like nanoseconds to, if you want to, I mean, we're all competitive people, if you want to be right and first to get information out. And there's so many different outlets. When I first started covering the Hill, which, as I mentioned, was my real first reporting gig as a news gatherer, and sort of learning how to source report, it was 5 networks, the newspapers, a couple of news, like a Hill newspapers, and that was kind of it, because there was no such thing as digital. And so now, and there weren't that many of us. And so we could kind of, it was easier to kind of skulk around a little bit and get information that other people couldn't get. Now there are so many people on Capitol Hill, for example, because you have Punchbowl, you have Politico, you have Notice, you have, I mean, and so many other online publications that maybe you've never heard of. And that means that there are a lot more people up there.
Let's talk about bipartisanship a little bit, because there was a time back when I was in the news business where the country definitely was divided, but it didn't seem as divided or as angry or as hate-filled as it is now. And senators and congresspeople on both sides of the aisle would go out for breakfast and hang out. Does that still happen? We're just not hearing about it, or does that not happen anymore? And what do you sense as sort of the mood as we're approaching the midterms?
It does happen. It doesn't happen as much as it used to for so many reasons. I think it started to really fray more and more when the sort of political pressure was on House members and senators not to move to Washington, because then they would lose touch with their constituents, which might be true. But it also meant that they didn't have their families in town, so their families didn't get to know each other, and then they would have to come in at the last minute for votes on Monday night or Tuesday, and then leave as the second that votes are over on Thursday. So they didn't have like time to go and drink, which is actually something that really does help with deal making.
Especially today, drinking definitely seems to help a lot.
And, you know, and break bread and everything. So that's number one. Also, money and fundraising. And they have to spend so much time calling. And it's not just calling, which is almost old fashioned now. Now it's coming up with viral moments that they can push out to their email lists or put on their social media in order to try to get as many small dollar donors as they can. Well, what do you think the best way to get a viral moment and get small dollar donors is? It's to say something outrageous and very partisan. And that happens over and over and over again, to the point where it's almost like impossible for people to have across the aisle, never mind conversations, but compromise. Then this, to me, I think, and we've been hearing a lot about gerrymandering in the news lately because of everything that's happening right now, recently with the Supreme Court and the Voting Rights Act, and that issue, which is changing things. But even before that, starting last year with the president and his political team pushing Texas to change the lines in Texas mid-decade, which is very rare, and then all of the wars that started ever since. Even before that, because of gerrymandering, in both parties, but Republicans seem to be better at it, and perhaps it's because they run the legislatures in a lot of these states that sort of have the most impact. There's so few swing districts, meaning the Republicans come from ruby red districts. The Democrats come from bright blue districts. And so if you're a Democrat and you are in a place where you almost have no threat of losing your election because a Republican beat you, the threat is you lose your election from the left. So what is your instinct? Your instinct is to move left. And then you have the Republicans who have no threat of losing a district because of a challenger from the left. Their challenge is in a primary from the right. So what's their instinct? Move right. So you've got the Republicans moving this way and the Democrats moving this way. What happens in the middle? Nothing.
No purple.
Right. Yeah, and it's getting worse. I mean, even in 2018, the last time the Democrats took over the House, there were like 3 times the swing districts that there are now because of gerrymandering even after the last census.
So are there any races that we should be particularly keeping our eye on just to take the temperature of America as we head into this midterm election season?
So many. I'm looking at, let's say I'll pick one, Michigan Senate, the Michigan Senate race. In the short term, it's about the sort of heart and soul of the Democratic Party. There are three main Democratic candidates who are kind of pushing slightly different flavors, in some cases very different flavors of the Democratic message. And then whomever wins the primary, obviously, is going to be up against Mike Rogers, probably, who's a former Republican House member who was what I like to call a normie, somebody who was he was chairman of that House Intelligence Committee, a very sort of right down the middle, if you will, conservative. And, he's like many Republicans, is very much pro MAGA because that's where the people who vote for him are. But it's a vacant blue seat. Gary Peters, the Democratic senator, is retiring. And it's a very swingy state. Michigan is very swingy. And so to me, whomever wins that is going to be perhaps a harbinger of what happens in 2028. Never mind, it will be very important for who wins control of the Senate.
So the president's approval rating is at an all-time low, and the stock market is at an all-time high. What is going on, and what are the issues that you think Americans are really caring about as we head in? Is it the war? Is it DEI and the pullback from that? I'm just so curious as to what your polling is showing.
It's all about affordability. I mean, it's and that's related to the war because you guys all know. I mean, we drive around and you see the gas prices, very different from how it was before the war started, and that's just gas. There's so many challenges that people have, and it's been so wild to hear President Trump and the people who work for him use almost verbatim the same language that we heard from President Biden and the people who work for him. I know maybe it feels bad, but look at this. Look at these data points. The stock market is high. It's going to be fine. Well, if you tell people that data shows that things are fine and they don't feel like it's fine, it's not going to work because they don't feel like it's fine because they are having trouble with basic stuff. They can't afford rent. They, God forbid, being able to actually buy a house. And so the sort of the gulf between the people who can go on vacation, never mind, buy a house and live comfortably, and people who are really struggling, despite the fact that they have good jobs, is real. And that is by far driving everything. And there are sort of ancillary but very much related issues. Healthcare, because it's access to healthcare, but it's also affordable healthcare. And so it all comes back to money and being able to feel comfortable in your life. economically and make sure that people around you can be fed and can be happy in that they feel like there's not a struggle and they're not exhausted every single day trying to not get ahead, but just tread water.
So back a number of years ago when we had Jim Acosta here, he was one of our Mona Sherman speakers, and he had just written a book that I published called The Enemy of the People, and that was a book that came about because Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who at the time was the White House press spokesperson, refused to tell Jim in the briefing room that the press was not the enemy of the people. And how does it feel? Because President Trump is constantly trashing CNN where you work. It's, we've never had a situation like this where the President of the United States seems to want to completely denigrate journalists. Do you ever have fear for your reporting, or do you feel that he's, bluffing, or like, what is it like being at the network that the president claims is the enemy of the people?
I mean, it's not fun. We're not alone.
Of course.
I think it's just anybody who doesn't suck up to him as opposed to reporting the facts is not, doesn't make him happy. And the big difference between when Jim Acosta was in the White House press pool during the first season, and now during the second season of Trump 2.0, is that they've totally changed the way that the White House press pool works.
Oh, how did they change it?
I mean, it used to be governed by the White House Correspondents Association, meaning the White House didn't decide which reporters were in the Oval Office. It was the White House Correspondents Association, the one that puts on the White House dinner. And it was very, I think, balanced and careful to put real journalists in. And so there was a rotation of TV reporters, there was a rotation of print and digital reporters. And they came in and they scrapped it. And they said, we're not doing that. We're deciding who's going to be in the pool. And so if you're watching on any given day, and President Trump has reporters in the Oval Office or wherever he is pretty much daily. He really is the opposite of Joe Biden in that sense. I mean, he is constantly talking to cameras and talking to reporters and answering questions. But a lot of times you get questions like, Mr. President, I can't remember, are you fantastic or are you just excellent? I'm here to tell you that is not a CNN, ABC, NBC, Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, these are people who they bring in as, I don't even know what they call them.
Plants.
Well, they're plants, but it's also because, yes, but it's also because those are the outlets they're part of the conservative ecosystem, media ecosystem. And it's all part of the algorithm that we all now are kind of sucked into, and it's which we didn't even talk about yet. But in any event, so that makes it hard to have kind of a cohesive situation. In fact, I will say that, like, when I hear the president call my friend Nancy Cortez ugly or tell Caitlin Collins you don't smile or whatever it is, as a former member of the White House press pool, because I covered, as I mentioned, George W. Bush, we had like-minded journalists. So if I can't imagine he would ever act like this, but if Bush would have acted like that, we would have said, okay, here's what we're going to do. When the president calls you ugly, and the next person he goes to, you're going to just ignore that, but ask the question that the person who is called ugly asked. And if he doesn't answer it, then the next person will do it. That's what I mean, I've had this conversation with Caitlin and others. It's just not possible because of who is in there. Long way of answering your question, and that my philosophy is, particularly when I'm anchoring during these moments, which happens a lot. My show is on from 12 to 1 Eastern, and he tends to have events around then. And this has happened many times where he's yelled at somebody. I will come out and I will, say, no, Nancy Cortez is not dumb. She's one of the smartest people I know. John Carl, that question was excellent. Thank you so much for asking that on behalf of all of us and on behalf of Americans, and then move on. But if I were in there, I would handle it exactly as they do, because he wants the reporters to be foils. He wants nothing more than to get that sort of back and forth and for reporters to take the bait. And my opinion, and clearly my colleagues' opinions, are don't take the bait. Just ignore it and keep asking the questions.
And despite all of this, you still have plenty of sources in the GOP, I'm sure,
Yeah.
who talk to you all the time.
And by the way, the president talks to us all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's part of his MO.
His shtick.
His shtick. I mean, he watches us. He watches everything. He consumes everything.
So I want to move on a little bit to the problem that is directly or indirectly related to algorithms and the changing of minds in America. And I am a proud Jewish woman in book publishing. You are a proud Jewish woman in television journalism. And you are the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors on one side of your family, and you are related to people murdered by the Nazis on another side. I am also a relative of people murdered during World War II. It's been really difficult to be Jewish, and there are many people, even who are Jewish, who are hiding that. So first of all, thumbs up for your bravery.
You too.
So let's talk about how it feels. I just know for myself as a child growing up, decades after World War II, always thinking, how could that have happened? How could that have happened? And yet it now seemed there was a candidate the other day who called for American Jews to be put in camps.
Yep.
What's going on? And how are you handling this as a journalist and a person?
I mean, honestly, it's maybe one of the hardest things that I have ever had to grapple with, because I obviously am human, and I feel like my best stories that I do is when I, humanize it, whether it's politics or not. But we're kind of also, at least for me, trained to disassociate. And it's really hard to disassociate here. I mean, October 7th, I ran into the newsroom. I was reporting as it was happening. I was anchoring, and I still, couldn't believe it. And I remember, Lisa, I said to the producers, it was like sort of during the day on that Saturday, I said, get the ADL. And they were like, why? I said, because I had already done a whole hour on anti-Semitism because it was already rising pre-October 7th. I said, because this is going to unleash so much more Jew hate. And I had like friends texting me like, this is not really appropriate. And I said, trust me, it is. You watch. And sadly, that's what happened. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And so, look, there are days where I just don't even look at my social media because it's so ugly and so awful. And the other challenge is that maybe it's because of the algorithms. It's like there's so much on my social media feed, as probably as yours, about attacks on Jews and anti-Semitism, and somebody who you thought was an ally, or at least not a hater, coming out and saying something. But other people don't see it. And even people who would be aligned with Jews morally, ethically, just like out of friendship, are not And in some cases, in fairness to them, it's because they don't see what we see, and they don't hear what we hear, and they don't experience what we experience. In other cases, they do, and they have chosen to equate Jewish Americans or Jewish Canadians, or pick your Jew in any country in the diaspora, with the actions of a democratic government, which is not unlike anybody here in any country abroad getting attacked because people don't like Donald Trump.
I mean, you are a mother of a teenage son. How do you talk to him about what's going on in the world?
Well, you know, it's hard. He goes to Jewish summer camp. He has a very strong Jewish identity, I think, for lots of reasons. And I mean, I wrote about this for CNN.com back when I did my first hour-long special on anti-Semitism. He was 10 years old at the time, and he asked me for a Jewish star to wear around his neck for Hanukkah. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I frankly blew him off because I didn't really think he was serious. And I am embarrassed to say I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do for a little kid. And this was, again, before October 7th. And then Hanukkah comes, and he's like, really somewhat sheepishly said, hey, Mom, like, I really didn't mean it when I said I wanted a Jewish star. And I said, why? He said, well, because my Christian friends wear crosses, and they're fine with that, and I'm proud to be Jewish. And obviously right? And he was 10. And of course, like, the Jewish star was there that day. And he hasn't taken it off since. And that was almost, 4.5, 5 years ago. And after October 7th, he made sure to, like, take it out and put it on the outside of his shirt. And it just, it makes me very proud. And, sometimes kids are so much smarter than we are.
They can be our greatest teachers, for
Yes.
sure. So
Yes.
let's talk about algorithms right now, because when you are on social media, you are fed what you want to see.
Or what it thinks you want
Or what
to
it
see.
thinks you want to see. And I also believe that people tend to watch the television networks that say what they want to hear. So that's not an algorithm, that's you pushing the button. And I think part of what has happened in our country, and part of it is because of the metadata behind the scenes that is feeding you what they think you want to see, or you being able to pick and choose who you want to listen to every day, is creating a problem with the national discourse.
100%.
So are there solutions? What do you think would be a potential solution?
I mean, my solution is not realistic. My solution is find a way to convince these social media companies that the algorithms that they have created in order to monetize are totally ruining our society. Never mind governing, the ability to govern. That's not going to happen. But there are some ideas. Speaking of bipartisanship, this past week I had Senator John Curtis, Republican of Utah, on with Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona, and they've been working on this project started by the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, called Disagree Better. He came up with it when he was the head of the National Governors Association. So I had them on together, and one of the things that they are pushing, and it's like a giant boulder up a very large mountain, is legislation to at least make social media companies culpable if somebody gets really hurt because of the algorithm, which is different from discourse. I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, but at least it's something. I don't know if they're going to be able to get this done because they're up against the social media companies who are lobbying, don't go anywhere near this.
And can we get your take on AI? And is it going to ruin the world? Has it already? Are we just completely
I don't
screwed?
think it has. I don't know. I every time I really try to drill down on AI, I get a headache.
I mean, because as a book publisher, this is the conversation we are having every single
totally.
day. Just this week, the head of Barnes & Noble
Yeah.
said that he was going to stock AI written books that caused a huge backlash. There are many, many authors in lawsuits because their words and the way they write have been stolen by AI. So there's probably news anchors who are AI news anchors or writing the news. So what do you think maybe
I'm nodding my head. I'm not.
Maybe not at CNN.
No.
But perhaps
Listen,
somewhere.
I think let's start with the positive. I think that there are, and we were talking about something that you're working on. I think I don't want to reveal too much, but there are so many amazing advantages to AI, especially in medical research, in ways that the computers can figure out ways to think about combating cancer or coming up with other diseases that human beings just have had trouble with, and that's incredible. Right? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not against AI personally. I use it all day long, but I do think it's a double-edged sword for sure.
What do you use? Do you use Claude?
We are just now getting Claude at my company where I work, but I'm a big fan of Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI. That happens to, and then I know people hate Elon Musk, but I think he's smart and I like Grok. I started with ChatGPT.
Is it less anti-Semitic now?
I have not found Grok to be anti-Semitic.
That's good.
But maybe it's just telling me what I want to hear.
And how do you use it? Sorry,
I mean, I use it all day, every day for all sorts of things, just for ideas, to answer questions. A wasp's nest fell in my yard. I took a picture of it and I said, what is the meaning of this? Anything I need to know. It's this it's basically my Google search.
Right.
And Google
a lot of people have moved from
and
Google
but now Google is coming up in the world and they're starting to be better. So maybe maybe I don't need it anymore. But as a book publisher, I would never use it to have an author write a book.
Right.
And if I suspect that an author has used AI to write a book, we have to have a very stern conversation with that author to say, because a book just got canceled from a competing publishing company, a horror novel, because it was determined that there was AI used, not by the author, but the author hired an outside editor who did use AI, and the author didn't know. The book got pulled, and it created a firestorm of controversy. So, we are talking about AI all day long as a book publishing company, and
look, it's
it
here.
Is what it is. The train left the station a long time ago.
It's like halfway across the country at this point. And sadly, social media was the first big example, and now we're at AI, where members of Congress are totally frozen. And they're frozen for partisan reasons, but they're also frozen because they don't understand it. And I mean, it was like 2 years ago, I think, Chuck Schumer and others. And by the way, I don't understand it either. But if I were legislating, I would hire people who do. And in fairness, I think they've tried. Chuck Schumer gave a whole speech about AI and how we need to regulate, and they haven't done anything. Nothing. Not that government really can control this genie and that it's out of the bottle, but you can put guardrails on. Just like you could have put guardrails on social media and on algorithms, just like there were guardrails around radio waves and broadcast television. But with these recent changes in technology, they're just asleep at the switch. So the answer is, maybe I'm totally naive, but I still think that humans get humans, and humans, you guys could be home watching somebody on AI or doing something via AI, but you're here because this is a human connection, right? And we appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure I'm going to feel like that when I'm at the Bruce Springsteen concert next week in DC. And so it's those kinds of gatherings and events that computers and AI, whatever you call them, bots, can't reproduce until they can.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, but really nobody wants to go to a book signing with a robot.
Right.
They want to meet Ann Patchett and Louise Erdrich,
Exactly.
and so I think that what is happening now is that the live experiences are becoming prioritized in a way
Exactly.
that they weren't previously. But talking about book publishing, so you have a book that you've written that's coming out in September, and it is called The Elections That Changed the World. And you wrote that with David Fisher. So just tell us a little bit, and I'd like everyone, even though Dana is not one of my authors, you should pre-order her book today, because if she were, I would say that. And
Thank you.
So for what it's worth, in book publishing, pre-orders are the name of the game.
The whole ball
and
game.
Publishers want as many pre-orders ahead of time so that we can actually figure out how many books to print and how to get the books spread out there. And it's harder and harder to make that happen. So tell us about this book, why you wanted to write this book, and why you're excited about it.
Well, it's the first and only other book that I was involved with at all was on the topic of elections, two real elections, also with David Fisher.
Yeah, America's deadliest election. It was a violent 1872 election, right?
Yeah, 18 and then 1876. And it was in Louisiana, and very long story short, the complete racism and fraud and everything else that happened there ended up setting the stage for Jim Crow for 100 years. That's a real Reader's Digest version of the book. But doing that project made David and I think, oh, well, maybe like I cover politics, elections, maybe we're onto something. So this upcoming book is 15 elections that we picked. It's certainly not exhaustive, but 15 elections that we picked that we think really did make a huge difference, and for good and bad. One of the elections was the election that led to Adolf Hitler becoming chancellor, and then just completely taking over the government. And
so they're global.
Global. We start with Julius Caesar.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's
not
so
here,
interesting.
not just here. Yeah. And one of, I think maybe the most interesting and relevant, given the fact that it's 250 years this year since since independence, are the two elections after George Washington left. The one where John Adams won, and then 1800, which was ended up between Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson ended up winning, but the reason that they were so consequential is because even though George Washington decided to leave and he was elected and all the things, they weren't really sure that this democracy thing was going to work. And
we're still not sure at this point.
Right. Well, but we weren't even sure. I mean, a lot of people in looking into this weren't even sure that it was going to last even to the first election post George Washington. And it did. And it was tough. And they learned a lot. And then they amended the Constitution. But I think there are lots of examples in there. Mandela. We go from Julius Caesar to Nelson Mandela.
So did you do it the way you do your debate prep? Did you just throw a bunch of elections into a pile and then just start weeding them out? Did you have a set of criteria that you both?
We wanted to have sort of a diverse range of places on the globe. Also gender. Also, I mean, there were a lot of examples. I mean, one of the things that we do is Indira Gandhi and Golda Meir, and it's sort of in one bucket of women, and even popes. So it's not just governing bodies. They're sort of democratically, small d, elected people, and how that was so consequential.
Wow. Well, I'm just going to remind you that it's called the elections that changed the world. So go on your Amazon algorithm and pull it up right now. I want to open it up to questions from the audience, but from me personally, thank you so much for having this wonderful conversation. And so I can't actually really see where the mics are out there, but if there is, oh, there's Carol. Okay, so come on up, and no topic is off limits.
So my topic is the Supreme Court. What's your view of what's going on there, and do you believe in term limits?
I am a journalist, so I believe in whatever is happening in the world that I'm going to cover. So I'm not here to give my opinion on anything, but the Supreme Court has a lot of power in this country, always has, but right now their decisions are about as consequential, I think, as they have been in my lifetime, for sure. Maybe even a couple of lifetimes.
So one topic you didn't touch on, because there's only a limited amount of time, was immigration and what's happening, and we all know what's happening. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel, or do we have to wait till 2028?
On immigration?
On proper immigration, and then, because today in the Times, I think it was, evidently in New York State, the number of arrests has gone up some huge amount, and one of the places they're going for arresting people is at courthouses where people are doing things legally.
Yep. Listen, I think that with what happened in Minnesota, the tactics that were used, which were just beyond, and the fact that everyday citizens went out there, and sadly 2 of them lost their lives, but they went out there and they used, this is a good example where social media and cell phones and technology is good, because people get to see things, and it backfired. And suddenly the president's number one issue, immigration, which along with the economy helped him come back in, go in the first time and then come back in, was dropping. The border, yes. Interior enforcement, not so much. And so now they've maybe started to do it more quietly. What I will say is, maybe this sounds harsh as a journalist, but I will say that if for people who were paying attention to what Donald Trump was saying when he was campaigning for president in 2024, he said this is what he was going to do. And the people who voted for him for so many reasons, but this is one of the things that he's cared about. I mean, if you think about Donald Trump, he was a Democrat. Maybe he was thinking about running as an independent back in 2000, and then he eventually settled on being a Republican. But he's only really been truly consistent on, I would say, 2 big issues which he cares about in his core: immigration and tariffs. I mean, he was pro-choice, now he's pro-life. There are lots of different changes that he's made. But those are 2. So again, like, if a politician tells you that they're going to do something over and over on the campaign trail, and they have the ability to do it, or they have the sort of fortitude to not see a line where other politicians do see lines, I think you should believe them.
My question is about Paramount and their eventual takeover of CNN News. How concerned are you that CNN is not going to become another CBS, and what could be done about it? And how can you keep Donald Trump out of your newsroom?
Donald Trump is not going to be in I'll speak for myself. This next month will be 33 years at CNN, which is kind of crazy.
Amazing.
And with me, it's really the only job I've had. At some point, I'll figure out what I'm going to do with my life. But I have never, we've had lots of different iterations, lots of different bosses. I have never felt pressure to go one way or another. I've never had somebody tell me, say that, don't say that, like ever. And I feel that most of the people I work with feel that way, and I don't see that changing.
But there's a new management that'll be in place very soon. And, CBS has experienced that change. We all know that. And I'm concerned that that kind of paragon may occur with CNN. I hope it's not true, but that's my concern.
Listen, I can control what I can control.
Sure.
And we all are journalists doing the best stuff that we can do. And corporate takeovers and mergers, they're well above my pay grade. So I'm just keeping my head on the ground and focusing on the journalism.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
How is the baby elephant doing?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you saw that. Did anybody see me with the baby elephant?
Yes.
I have to say that.
Wait, tell us the story, because I wasn't aware of the baby elephant.
All right, so at the Smithsonian, the National Zoo, which is part of the Smithsonian, there was a baby elephant born in February. And I had done a story on the pandas who came back. And so as soon as the baby elephant was born, our team were like, we have to go meet the baby elephant, obviously. And so they gave us an exclusive right before the baby elephant was being revealed to the public, which was on Earth Day, April 22nd. We got to go, and I got to prepare the elephant's bottle and feed the elephant.
What's the elephant's name?
The elephant is Lin Mai, and she is the cutest, most adorable thing. And she was so playful and so loving. And I mean, it's very sad, but her mom rejected her, which is why she has the bottle, because she's not nursing. And so that's sad. And the mom is, still at the zoo, and they're trying to find ways for them to connect. It hasn't happened yet. The good news is that she's kind of been adopted by an older female elephant who couldn't have kids of her own.
Aw, it's very sweet. So she's being fostered.
She's so cute. It honestly changed me. It was like spiritual. I'm not kidding. I know that sounds really corny, but it was. Well, so if you're in Washington, go see the baby elephant.
But I think, in a way that, there's so much hate in the world.
Exactly.
There's so many horrible things happening, and we need a baby elephant story. Yeah, it makes us all feel better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, next up.
And that definitely goes to my question. Look, I retired after 40 years as a press photographer and editor. And one of the reasons I retired was because it was on both the left and the right of the aisle, as we say it. There was so much animosity and vitriol and even physical violence in the field, for sure, against us, against members of the media. And that part of the reason was because we're the enemy of the people. And
because
we're the enemy of the people. And I always called myself the proud enemy of the people. And I tried to keep to that, but it was just so dangerous and it was so disturbing to be out in the field with that. And so I ask you, how do you reconcile that? How do you deal with that in the professional life, in your personal life? And do you think we're ever going to be able to bring everybody together without having to have a Pearl Harbor or 9/11?
I hope so. I hope those things don't happen, and I hope so. I often think about, since we were both talking about our experience on 9/11, God forbid if that happened now. I mean, you remember, I was there on Capitol Hill, outside the Capitol, when the Democrats and Republicans who were there just spontaneously started singing God Bless America. And it was genuine, and there was real bipartisanship in the days and weeks after 9/11. And I often wonder, would that happen today? If 9/11 happened in these times? And I'm sad to say I don't know. And as sort of the enemy, the people that you were discussing, I mean, it's hard, and it's not just here, by the way. My colleagues who are in war zones, I mean, you see them, they're wearing the flak jackets that say press, and that used to matter, and people used to just leave them alone, and then they started getting abducted and kidnapped. So things have changed globally, and it's not great. That's the candid answer.
And you have to be brave.
Yeah.
And it's a job. The job of a journalist in today's universe requires a coat of armor to a certain degree that didn't used to require. I mean, you could just want to cover news stories, and you didn't necessarily have to fear for your life. And I think any journalist covering news stories out in the field, out on the streets, has in the back of their mind an escape plan for what's happening, such as the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which I attended and was under the table. And so there's just a lot to be wary about in our world, but then there's so much to be hopeful for as well. So I guess it's just balancing the yin and the yang of it all. All right, just a few more questions. I'm not aware of what time it is, Carol, so if you have an idea. 7 more minutes. All right, so everybody who's online will get to ask their question.
Well, I want to thank you from everybody here for your honesty and openness and coming to talk with us. It's been fabulous. I was thanking you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question which follows really from what you were just saying about how you see the potential for repair from the enormous destruction that it's not just Trump, and I think you're saying this is a global phenomena, is going on to core institutions that we felt were core to and essential to what democracy is about. The erosion of trust in the Supreme Court, the interference with elections, the shutting up of journalists who he doesn't like, the limiting of access to information. How are we going to repair from that, and how are people going to gain trust in the basic core institutions of democracy?
I wish I knew the answer to that, how you get trust back. I think the thing that gives me hope is that there's a pendulum in the history of civilization, and it tends to swing back. And I'm hoping that this pendulum that there's a revolt against the revolt, and that starts to happen. And I mean, you do see it in small but important areas. I do think that maybe you all have this experience in your lives. There are people who are more willing, yes, maybe even if they're seeing horrible things online, maybe because of that, a little bit more kind to the people that you see in the store or at Starbucks or in your community. And there's a lot more interest in faith. I think people are really yearning for not just online communities, but communities and a higher purpose. And so I do think that there are slivers of hope and bright spots, and the idea that we're all human, and I fundamentally believe that at our core, we want to do good, we want to see good, and we want to be good. And I just think that at some point that is going to break through. Maybe I'm a sad, sappy optimist, but you have to believe that.
All right, we have 5 more minutes, so just
I'll keep it short.
yeah,
Okay.
keep your questions short, keep your answers short.
Hi.
Okay.
I know you mentioned about concern about algorithms in the news or a motivation of monetary, monetary and selling papers, but I was very concerned last week about the opinion article piece in the New York Times regarding Israel. And I personally feel it really fed a lot of anti-Semitism, and it really wasn't balanced or well-researched or fair journalism. And I wonder if you have any reactions to that.
Excuse me, that was my question also. All right, well, that'll save us time. I mean, yeah, Christoph has really whipped up a firestorm.
He's whipped up a firestorm.
Of anger, certainly in my secret commiseration Jewish publishing WhatsApp groups.
Yes.
Where it's out of control.
It is. It's everywhere. I think that, listen, again, I'm going to be an optimist. Sometimes you need something that is so unbelievable to cross the Rubicon to get people talking who aren't just the people who are paying attention.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how low can it go? And when is the new low going to be so low that we have to start moving up?
Yeah.
Maybe it was that.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I know he's so not satisfied with that answer. Sorry.
Well, these are big questions.
I think the technical word for that is punt. But I really do believe that. Like, this broke through. It wasn't just on my algorithm. It wasn't just on your algorithm. Like, it broke through. And yes, it broke through not for good reasons, the reasons that you just described, but perhaps it's gotten people who don't normally pay attention to pay attention and think. I really do try to think that.
Beside Donald Trump, who do you predict will be the next president?
Not Donald Trump. Not because of me, but because there actually is a constitution that says he can't be. And if we're there, then we're having a very different conversation. I'm not in the prediction business. I'm in the reporting business.
How do you read the room right now?
Say it again?
If you had to read the room and the country, any sense of where it's going to go?
I mean, at this point in the cycle in 2008, if you would have told me that a guy who had been in the Senate for 5 minutes named Barack Hussein Obama would be president, would any of you have said, yeah, oh, sure. And by the way, he's going to beat Hillary Clinton first, and then he's going to go on and be president. So who knows? Maybe it's somebody that we are not even thinking of right now, which is what makes my job interesting, and it's what makes our country pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
This might be easy. If your son says he'd like to have a career similar to yours and follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give him?
Oh, man. The advice that I would give him is advice that he would probably say, yeah, duh, Mom, because he's already native to it, is like, learn everything that you can. Well, three things, actually. One, just in terms of the mechanism, just learn everything you can about digital reporting, digital platforms, and things that just they're not native to me, but they are to him. So I think that we got that covered. Number two, learn as much as you can about history, because it does repeat itself. It rhymes, all of the things. And number three is you got to make sure that you know how to write more than a text to your mom that says, bruh.
Thank you.
Like complete sentences, not IDK or TLDR or all of the things, but like use a whole sentence with a noun and a verb and a capital at the beginning of the sentence and a period or even an exclamation point. Choose your own punctuation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Final question.
Hey there. I think there's a common theme to some of the topics that have been touched upon this evening. There's the mergers and acquisitions of different media companies. There's the denigration of the press by our president and the party that's in power. And there's AI even, that all tie into this, what I would call a multi-billion-dollar war to control the truth and control reality that the press is very much a player in some respect. And, you know, I wonder what is going to make the difference in terms of the institutions that are genuinely interested in bringing the truth to people rather than controlling the truth for selfish interests to win the day in the end.
People, consumers. I mean, it's it's sort of a vicious cycle. So if you don't really know the truth, then how do you stand up and say, I want the truth? But people are smart. You guys are smart. And even when you're getting, you know, all of the ads that you're getting on your algorithm because you talked in front of your phone about needing a new pair of scissors, and then all of a sudden everything that you get on your Instagram is like different versions of scissors, which is a thing that happens. You know what's truth and you know what's not. And so what's going to win the day, the way that truth and reality is going to win the day is by people demanding it, by the marketplace demanding that. And that's the number one thing.
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.